The United States is a nation defined by its history of sustained racial injustice and violence that is ever present and ever evolving. Moreover, white Christians have actively defended and promoted this racial injustice and violence throughout our nation's history. In order for there to be any hope of true justice and reconciliation, silence and denial surrounding Black suffering must give way to expression met with humility and an openness to transformation from white Christians. While perhaps not the only way forward, lament can serve as a starting point for Christians in the United States to recognize the pervasive effects of racial trauma in this nation and move towards reconciliation. Biblical lament is not unrestrained speech. It is not simply a form of venting or whining. Biblical lament is a structured and complex language of complaint, protest, and appeal directed to God. At the heart of the lament is the presence of accusatory questions. Ancient Israel cried out in response to experiences of suffering and of God's silence, demanding to know why such suffering was happening and how long it would last. While the funeral dirge looks to the past, bewailing someone who has died, the lament looks to the future as a prayer directed to God. Lament in ancient Israel was done in the context of public worship, since God's silence in the face of human suffering was not just an individual concern, but a concern for the entire community. Through the ongoing use of lament throughout the Old Testament, ancient Israel kept questions of justice visible and legitimate. However, lament is often avoided in today's church. It is typically absent in the liturgy, hymns, and even in the religious community's memory of suffering and pain. Walter Brueggemann argues that the loss of lament in the liturgy of American churches is a social and political decision. Lament is uncomfortable to those who are materially well off and whose continued prosperity depends on the status quo of the suffering of others. Those who are well off do not want to be reminded that they too are vulnerable to suffering or that others suffer around them. However, without lament, the church risks becoming merely a community of yes men and women, celebrating and consenting through complicitous silence to life that is not right. To remain silent, or even worse, to praise in response to God's silence in the face of such injustice, is a betrayal of covenantal faith. Through the practice of lament, first-person pronouns are used to describe the situation, oftentimes using vivid imagery and metaphor. The lamenter directs the complaint to God, which does not shy away from holding God accountable for the lamenter's predicament and demanding change. Psalm 22, which is later quoted by Jesus on the cross, cries out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from helping me, from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but find no rest. For dogs are all around me, a company of evildoers encircles me. As Nancy Lee states, lament is not mere wailing. It is heartfelt, reasoned, poignant artistry, an important expression for questioning and for human healing and wholeness. As such, laments incorporate many complex emotions, including alienation, anger, revenge, repressed silence, guilt, regret, and even anxiety over horrific, invasive memories, which are artistically bound and controlled in a larger narrative form that can work towards healing, even after trauma has destroyed the social fabric. When one recites biblical laments, one enters into these complex emotions, seeking healing. Prayers of lament give voice to extreme suffering, while also revealing the precarity of the situation of those not suffering. Scott Ellington states, prayers of lament assault the ears of those who are at ease. They explore the extreme places of our lives, raising difficult questions about our relationship with God and expressing a cavernous depth of suffering. It is this very cavernous depth of suffering which makes prayers of lament so uncomfortable to those standing by to witness, because the lament opens them up to the experience of the lamenter. They speak too frankly and bear too much of the soul of the person praying, and they remind us that we can each find ourselves in a similar situation. Thus, through shocking honesty of emotion and pain, lament both reveals the complicity of those at ease in the suffering of others, as well as the potential for those at ease to one day become the sufferers themselves. Soong Cha Ra, an ordained minister in the Evangelical Covenant Church, recounts his experience of evangelical communities calling for lament in response to Michael Brown's death, the treatment of his body, and the subsequent lack of indictment by a grand jury. Ra reflects on lament and sees an important theme that emerged out of people's frustration, which was a call to hear the stories of Black Americans. Rather than jump to judgment, Ra says that Christians felt the need to listen first. Ra poignantly states, "We did not need to hear from the ministry experts who pontificated from the comfort of upper middle class white suburban churches. Instead, the voices of Black women who lost their children and the victims of police brutality needed to be the central voices we heard." Similarly, over the past few months, as more tragic accounts of the killing of Black lives have come to light, there have been widespread calls in the United States to finally listen to the testimony of Black Americans, such as with the June 2nd social media campaign, Blackout Tuesday. And yet, as our social media feeds became an endless scroll of black boxes, access to information from important organizations promoting racial justice in the country was buried under the storm of hashtagged black boxes. Awareness may have been raised on this day, but how much listening did we actually do? How much did we allow ourselves to be opened to the possibility of sustained transformation within ourselves? White Christians have dominated the conversation for far too long, while also ignoring the horrific racial injustice and violence that exists in the United States. Kathleen O'Connor argues that the continued denial of others' pain is contributing to the racial divide in the United States. She says, "When we cannot hear others' suffering and receive it without defensiveness or extreme fear, we perpetuate resentment and misunderstanding. Thus, every effort must be made to ensure that the white voice is not recentered in the struggle for racial justice and reconciliation. This call to listen rather than jump to judgment and action is a crucial aspect of lament. While the silence that is necessary to listen can be painfully difficult, it is a crucial precursor for true healing and reconciliation. The lamenter must not be silenced, and a happy ending must not be imposed upon the lamenter's testimony. However, white Christians must not maintain a permanent silence, because prophetic advocacy is also a crucial aspect of lament. Continued silence acts as passive lament rather than active lament. Passive lament fails to confront injustice, while active lament strives to elicit action that changes the current order of the day. Through grioche, a term Barbara Holmes coins for Afrocentric midrash, the Black community reads scripture and interrogates the silence of the text, reading liberation and empowerment into those silences alongside the historical memory of the community's own stories. This is not a new practice, but one even exhibited in the Old Testament text itself. Many of the Psalms contain superscriptions added after the original writing of the psalm, which give a historical context to the psalm in order to help situate the reader in a historical setting to better understand the psalm. As modern readers of biblical laments, we recite these words that come from a very different context than our own, and we place ourselves in the text and in the history of Israel, a history that not only includes tragedy and defeat, but also divine justice and restoration. However, for the recitation of these laments to be truly transformative for the modern reader, we must recontextualize even more to take account of our current context of racial injustice and violence. Prayers of lament situated in these new contexts challenge white Christians to not only acknowledge the history of racial injustice, but to also acknowledge our own complicity in upholding and perpetuating systemic racism, anti-Blackness, and violence in the United States. Lament should assault the ears of those who are at ease. Instead of identifying with the one crying out in lamentation, it is time for us as white Christians to recognize that when we recite biblical laments, we should not automatically identify with the suffering one crying out to God. Rather, we should think critically about whether we are in fact like the enemies in these laments, the ones causing the suffering through both our actions and our lack of action, the ones in need of drastic transformation. While lament may cause discomfort, it is a necessary precursor to hope. Undergirding lament is not a cheap form of optimism, but hope. Brian Massingale defines hope as a stance that good ultimately, but not always, triumphs over evil. And in that process, more than a good few people will pay a very high and awful price. It looks squarely at the intransigence of evil, acknowledges the tragedy of loss and defeat, yet refuses to accept that evil, tragedy, and defeat will have the final say in human affairs. To lament is to hope in the face of risk, refusing to accept the situation as is, while also refusing to meet God's silence with human silence. Lament is a staunch refusal to step away from the relationship with God and with our fellow human beings. As Ellington states, the prayer of the lament stakes all on the conviction that God hears and will answer. Ultimately, while the prayer of lament involves a degree of risk, to remain silent in the face of God's silence is to accept and embrace the certainty of hopelessness. Because of our hope, biblical lament turns to praise, which can seem like a jarring transition from the desperate pleas from the pit of suffering that precedes the praise. Emmanuel Kantagole noticed that the prayers of lament he studied in East Africa display a sense of utter helplessness, and in that desperation, the voices and pleas are directed beyond themselves and beyond their communities to an invisible and at the moment silent power, to God or Allah. Thus, Katangole concludes, far from being a cry of despair, biblical lament brings together lament and hope and confirms that the two are what he calls twin sisters. Just as lament is born out of relationship between humanity and God, lament can be used within the American community to work towards racial justice and reconciliation. This must begin with the silence and listening of white Christian Americans. We must actually open our ears and hearts to the suffering that Black Americans have faced both historically and today. This silence may be uncomfortable for many white Christians who do not wish to see themselves as white supremacists or the beneficiaries of white supremacy, but it is necessary. Those who have suffered for generations under the weight of racial injustice and violence must be given the space and respect to lament fully, without interruption and without immediate response. Just as the lamenters of the Old Testament were given full space to lament without interruption or commentary, even from God. Perhaps then we might hope that a much needed and radical break with white supremacist thinking and anti-Blackness can finally occur in the United States.